The coarse rope bit into her wrists, leaving raw, stinging welts. But that pain was nothing compared to humiliation weighing down her chest. Cordelia, maced rigid on a crude wooden stage, erected in the center of Deadwood's dusty Main Street. The eyes of rough, lustful men bore into her, stripping her dignity away with every second that passed. Beside the platform stood her father, Jeremiah Whitmore, his face pale and drawn beneath the brim of his worn hat. His voice trembled as he addressed a gathering mob. "She's untouched, strong, 17 years old. Starting bid is $50, he choked out, shame seeping through each word. On horseback nearby, Malachi Voss loomed like a vulture, his black steed stamping the dirt beneath. He idly flipped coins in his hand, his icy gaze dissecting Cordelia as if she were livestock at market. The twisted grin that pulled across his scarred face made her stomach churn. 3 months earlier, her father had borrowed money from Voss to save their crumbling ranch. But the debt had ballooned far beyond what they could ever repay, now standing at $200. As the first offers rang out, a prospector called 60, a saloon keeper with rotting teeth shouted 75. Cordelia's pulse quickened. Each bid was like another shovel of dirt onto her grave. She considered running, but Voss's hired thugs ringed the platform, hands poised on their weapons, ready to cut down any escape attempt. The cool autumn breeze whipped her long brown hair across her face as she searched the crowd, praying for a miracle. But these weren't men looking for a wife. They were predators, hungry for something far worse. Just as despair threatened to crush her, she saw him. In the far corner of the crowd stood a tall figure wrapped in a weather-beaten black coat. Unlike the others who jostled and shouted, this man stood perfectly still, his arms folded, eyes locked onto scene with quiet intensity. She didn't recognize him, but his presence made the fine hairs on her arms stand up. The bidding crawled past $120 when the stranger finally moved. He didn't shove his way forward. Instead, the crowd instinctively parted as he strode toward the platform. As he neared, Cordelia caught her first clear look at his face. Sun-hardened skin, steel-gray eyes that seemed to cut through flesh and bone. Voss noticed him, too, and for the first time that morning, the grin vanished from his face. The man stopped directly in front of her, looking up at a gaze so penetrating she momentarily forgot how to breathe. Then, reaching into his coat, he pulled out a leather pouch heavy with coins. Without fanfare, he poured its contents into his hand, more silver than most in that crowd had ever seen. $200, he declared, his voice slicing through the restless noise like a sharp blade. The street fell silent. Mouths hung open, eyes widened. His offer wasn't just higher. It was precise, down to the last dollar owed to Voss. No room left for profit. Voss's face reddened with fury. This wasn't how he had planned things. His intention had been to buy Cordelia cheaply, then sell her to a Denver brothel for a hefty profit. Now, this stranger was ruining everything. Now hold on there, mister. That's a mighty fine offer, but nothing. The stranger cut him off, stepping close enough for Voss to smell the dust on his coat. The bid's $200. Anyone else? The crowd shifted uneasily. No one dared challenge him. This quiet man radiated a calm threat, like a coiled rattlesnake ready to strike. Even those with money wouldn't risk crossing him. Jeremiah swallowed hard, darting his gaze between Voss and the stranger. "Mr. Voss, sir, the bid is fair. 200 clears the debt." "The debt!" Voss sneered, his hand drifting toward the pistol on his hip. "But what about my trouble? My time? My men?" The stranger noticed a movement and offered a thin, cold smile, a wolf's grin before the kill. "Are you reaching for that gun, Mr. Voss?" His tone made several men instinctively step back. Voss's fingers froze. He was used to bullying shopkeepers and desperate farmers, not facing down seasoned killers, and every fiber is being screamed that the stranger was exactly that. I accept the bid," Voss finally spat, his voice small, with calm precision. The stranger walked to the platform and handed the money to Jeremiah, whose hands trembled as he clutched the fortune. "Cut her loose," the stranger ordered. As the ropes fell, Cordelia rubbed her chafed wrists, staring at the man who had bought her freedom. Up close, She saw faint scars crisscrossing his hands and a mended bullet hole in his coat. A man who had clearly walked through danger more than once. "Thank you," she whispered, unsure if gratitude was the right emotion. He nodded once, his gray eyes softening just slightly. Then, turning to the crowd, his voice rang out again. "She's under my protection now. If anyone wishes to challenge that, they'll answer to me." One by one, the spectators dispersed, but Cordelia noticed Voss's final glare as he retreated. The hatred on his face promised that this battle wasn't over. The stranger then helped her step down from the platform, his grip firm but unexpectedly gentle. As her feet touched solid ground, she realized she was completely at his mercy. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Thaddeus Crow," he said, tipping his hat, "though most folks just call me Silent." Before she could press him further, Jeremiah stumbled forward, clutching the pouch like a lifeline. "Mr. Crow, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my little girl from—" Silent's eyes turned ice cold. "You were about to sell your own daughter to settle your gambling debts. Whitmore, don't expect gratitude." Jeremiah's face crumpled with shame. The truth hung between them, undeniable and ugly. "What I did was wrong," he mumbled, "but I had no choice. If Voss took the ranch, we'd have had nothing. At least this way." "At least this way," Silent cut in, his voice low but sharp. "You traded your child's soul to save your own hide." His words sliced deeper than any shout. "Take your money and leave. And if I ever find you gambling again, I'll make sure Voss finishes what he started." Jeremiah nodded pitifully and vanished into the thinning crowd, leaving Cordelia feeling utterly alone. She turned back to Silent, studying the lines on his face, searching for any hint of his intentions. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "That depends," he replied, adjusting his hat against the late afternoon sun. "You got family? Someone who might take you in?" She shook her head. "My mother's been gone 3 years. My father's all I had, and—" She trailed off, glancing in the direction he had gone. Silent paused, scanning the emptying street. After a long silence, he spoke again, his voice gentler. "I've got a small ranch about 10 miles north. Nothing fancy, but it's safe. You can stay there until you figure out your next move." Suspicion crept into her voice. "And what do you expect in return?" "Only what you're willing to give," he answered plainly. "I could use help with cooking and chores. You need a roof over your head. Seems fair to me." Cordelia wanted to believe him, but experience had taught her otherwise. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Silent was quiet for so long, she thought he might not answer. But when he finally did, his voice carried the weight of something deeper. The weight in his voice carried the ache of old wounds. "Because someone should have stood up for my sister when she needed them. No one did. She paid the price." The raw truth in his words unsettled Cordelia. Maybe, just maybe, this man was unlike the others. But as they slowly made their way toward his horse, neither noticed the dark figure lurking between 2 nearby buildings. Malachi Voss hadn't left town. His burning stare followed them, rage simmering just beneath the surface. This was far from over. The journey to Silent's ranch was tense. Seated behind him on a large black stallion, Cordelia became painfully aware of every sway, every breath, every accidental brush of contact between them. She had never been so physically close to a man aside from her father. The nearness made her cheeks flush with discomfort. Sensing her unease, Silent kept the horse's pace steady and made no attempt at small talk. The silence that stretched between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was careful, granting her space to process the storm that had torn through her life. As the hills rolled past, Cordelia found her gaze fixed on the back of his head. His dark hair brushed the collar of his coat, and just above the shirt line, she spotted a long scar running across his neck, a reminder of whatever violent past had shaped him. After a long pause, she broke the quiet. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask." "Don't mean I'll answer," came his dry reply. Despite herself, she almost smiled. "Why do they call you Silent?" "Because most words are wasted. I speak when it matters." "But you spoke up back there. You faced down Voss." "Sometimes words are necessary. Most times they ain't." Another beat of silence passed. Then she dared to ask, "What happened to your sister?" This time, the pause was longer. She worried he wouldn't respond at all, but when he finally did, his voice was rough, scarred like the man himself. She was around your age. Fell in with the wrong man. When she needed help, everyone turned their backs. Even me? His breath caught for a moment. She's dead. The word hung in the air, heavy and cold. Cordelia's throat tightened. She hadn't expected such honesty. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be smart. Trust few. Always have a way out." As they crested a hill, Silence Ranch came into view. A modest wooden house, a weathered barn, and a few scattered outbuildings surrounded by fencing that leaned under years of wear. It wasn't grand, but it offered something far more precious: safety. They neared the front gate when Silence suddenly pulled the reins, halting the horse abruptly. His body stiffened, and his hand slid toward his pistol. "What is it?" Cordelia whispered. "The front door. It's open. I always lock it." Her blood turned cold. Someone had been there. Maybe still was. Silent dismounted smoothly, helped her down with quiet urgency, then motioned for her to stay behind the horse. His movements shifted, calculated, cautious, the instinct of a predator. They approached the house in silence, using fence posts for cover. Up close, the door wasn't just ajar, it had been kicked in. The frame splintered, one hinge broken. At the corner of the house, Silence signaled for her to wait as he disappeared around the side, moving like a shadow. The minutes dragged endlessly. Cordelia's pulse thundered in her ears as she strained to hear any hint of danger. Finally, Silent reappeared. His face was tight with anger. "They're gone," he said, holstering his weapon. "But they left a message." "What kind of message?" she asked nervously. He clenched his jaw. "The kind that says this isn't over." As they stepped inside, Cordelia's stomach sank. The house had been ransacked, furniture overturned, dishes smashed, drawers emptied. But the true message was scrawled across the wall in bold red paint. "She belongs to me, Voss." Silent stared at the words, his shoulders rigid, every muscle tense. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but cold as steel. "He's made this personal." Fear twisted in her gut. "What does that mean?" "It means he doesn't care about the money anymore. He wants you, and he's willing to destroy everything I have to take you." The weight of what she had brought upon him settled heavily on her. "This is my fault," she whispered. "I should leave. If I go, maybe he'll leave you alone." Silent turned sharply, his eyes like flint. "Voss doesn't let go. Running won't save you. It'll only make you easier to catch." She sank into one of the few intact chairs, overwhelmed. "So what do we do?" Without a word, Silent moved the fireplace, pried up a loose floorboard, and retrieved a hidden stash, a rifle, ammunition, and a pouch of coins. The preparation was swift, practiced. "We get ready," he said, "for war. But it's only the two of us," she said, voice trembling. "Two people ready to die for something are worth more than a dozen hired guns chasing a paycheck." He checked the rifle with skilled efficiency. "The only question is, what are you willing to die for?" The question struck her. Hours ago, she would have said nothing. But staring at this man, who risked everything for her, something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, she felt a fire burn where fear once lived. "I'll fight," she whispered. "I'll fight to keep my dignity. And for the one person who saw me as more than a thing to be sold." Silent looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time, his lips curved into the faintest ghost of a smile. "Then let's focus on living." He handed her a small pistol. "You know how to use this?" "My mother taught me when I was 12. "Good. You'll need it, because if I'm right, they'll be here soon." As if summoned by his words, distant hoofbeats echoed closer, growing louder with each passing second. Silent moved to the window, pulling aside the curtain just enough to peek out. 6 of them. They're fanning out. Cordelia's hands shook as she loaded the pistol. 6 bullets. 6 chances. "What's the plan?" she asked, forcing herself to breathe. "You cover the back door. Anyone comes through there, you don't hesitate. I'll handle the front." The thunder of hooves halted just outside. Then came Voss's voice, loud and mocking. "Crow, I know you're in there with my property. Send her out, and maybe I'll let you live." Silent didn't respond. True to his name, he saved his words for when they mattered. "Have it your way," Voss shouted. "Light it up, boys." The first shot shattered the remaining window glass. A hail of gunfire followed, wooden walls splintering like kindling. Cordelia dropped to the floor, heart racing wildly. Silent returned fire with terrifying precision. Every shot from his rifle was deliberate, controlled. A scream rang out, the sound of a body collapsing. "One down," Silent muttered. "They're not done yet," he muttered grimly. 5 of Voss's men still remained, and they were using the hail of bullets as cover to inch closer to the house. Cordelia could hear heavy boots stomping across the porch, then a crash at the back door as someone tried to force it open. The door burst inward, and a burly man with a jagged scar running down his cheek lunged into the room, pistol raised. Instinct kicked in. Cordelia didn't hesitate, her mother's lessons taking over her trembling hands. She squeezed the trigger twice. The man stumbled backward, his chest erupting in red, and collapsed into the doorway with a heavy thud. For a moment, Cordelia froze, her breath shaking. She had just taken a man's life. "Good shooting," Silent said, eyes never leaving his window. "But don't lose focus. We still got work to do." A fresh wave of gunfire rattled the house, this time aimed at the oil lamps inside. One exploded with a violent crack, spraying burning oil across the wooden floor. Flames licked up the walls, smoke billowing thick into the air. "They're trying to burn us out," Silent barked, quickly reloading his rifle. The growing heat was suffocating, orange light flickering wildly against the smoke-filled walls. Through the growing haze, Voss's voice rang out once more, closer than before. "Last chance, Crow. Hand the girl over or die with her." Silent turned to Cordelia, calm even as the flames crept closer. "Your choice. I won't hold it against you." For a heartbeat, she almost considered it. Walking out might save Silent. His house, his life. But then she thought what awaited her as she surrendered. Chains, cruelty, and a lifetime of being owned. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice steady. Silent gave her a short nod, a flicker of respect in his gray eyes. "Then we make our stand." The fire raged higher, the room filling with thick, choking smoke. It was becoming impossible to stay. Silent grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the rear of the house, away from the advancing flames. "There's a root cellar behind the kitchen," he said, coughing. "It leads to a tunnel my grandfather built a long time ago. We can use it." They dropped to their knees, crawling low beneath the smoke. Behind them, Voss's men shouted orders, confident their prey was cornered. Reaching the kitchen, Silent yanked aside a smoldering rug, revealing a trapdoor beneath. He wrenched it open. "Go first. Move fast. Stay quiet." Cordelia slipped into the cool, damp cellar air, Silent right behind her. The door closed just as a flaming beam collapsed above them, crashing down where they'd been seconds earlier. The tunnel was narrow, forcing them to crawl on their stomachs through the damp earth. "How far?" she whispered. 50 yards. It opens into the barn." They inched forward, the distant sounds of gunfire fading behind them. The rough ground scraped her skin, tearing her dress, dirt filling her lungs and mouth, but she pushed onward. There was no other option. At last, Silent pressed against a wooden hatch above them. Pushing it open, they emerged into barn, gasping for breath. His black stallion shifted nervously at the smell of smoke. Silent checked his rifle. "We got 5 minutes before they realize we aren't burning inside that house." And then, Cordelia asked, wiping sweat and grime from her face, "Then we finish this." His voice was cold, steady. "I won't leave you to face them alone." He shook his head. 5 against 1 is better odds than 5 against 2 when one of us isn't trained. "I'm done running," she said firmly, gripping her pistol. "You said it yourself. Sometimes 2 people fighting for something real are stronger than a dozen chasing a payday." Silent studied her closely for a moment, then gave a slight nod. "Fine, but you do exactly what I say. No hesitation." She nodded, her heart hammering. Good, because what comes next will either save us or kill us both. Outside, Voss's shouting grew louder, the men closing in on the barn. Silent positioned Cordelia behind stacked hay bales by the side door, giving her a clear line of sight across the yard. Wait for my signal. When you hear my whistle, open fire. With that, Silent slipped out the back of the barn and vanished into the growing darkness. Cordelia sat alone, the heavy pistol steady in her hands, heart racing. Peering through the cracks in the wooden slats, she could see Voss's men gathered in front of the burning house, laughing and passing a bottle between them. Certain their job was done. Voss stood apart, the fire casting his face in a wicked orange glow. His expression won a smug satisfaction. He believed they were dead. Then came the sharp whistle. Cordelia rose from cover and fired. At the same moment, Silent opened fire from the tree behind them. The ambush worked perfectly. The men panicked, scattering like startled animals. Two fell immediately, one clutching his shoulder as he collapsed. "It's a trap," one of them yelled. "They're still alive." Voss spun, eyes widening in rage as he spotted Cordelia by the barn. His face twisted into something monstrous. "Kill her. Kill them both," he roared. The remaining two men turned their guns toward Cordelia, but Silent was already moving. Like a shadow cutting through the dusk, his rifle barked again and again. One man fell instantly. The second managed a single shot before Silent's bullet found him. Only Voss remained. His eyes darted between Cordelia and Silent, calculating. His hand hovered over his weapon, torn between fight and flight. But he saw the futility. Silent stood 20 yards away, rifle aimed square at his chest, while Cordelia flanked him with steady hands. "You think you've won?" Voss spat, voice venomous. "I've got friends in every town from here to Denver. They'll find you. They'll find your bodies." Silent's voice cut through the night, calm and lethal. "Draw." The two men stood locked in a silent standoff, fire crackling behind them, wind hissing through the trees. Voss's hand twitched toward his gun, then stopped. He wasn't made for fair fights. "I ain't drawing on you, Crow, but this ain't over." "Yes, it is." Silent's rifle cracked. The bullet struck Voss in the chest, sending him staggering before collapsing into the dirt. His lifeless eyes stared skyward, unblinking, as the final echoes of gunfire faded. Cordelia's legs gave way beneath her, the weight of the night crashing down. She dropped to her knees, trembling, the enormity of it all washing over her. Silent walked over and gently lifted her to her feet. His touch was steady, his eyes softer now, filled with something she hadn't seen before. "It's over," he said simply. She nodded, unable to find words. The house still burned behind them, but the nightmare was finished. They had survived. They were free, and for the first time since her mother's death, Cordelia felt hope bloom in her chest. 3 months later, she stood beside Silent in a quiet ceremony in Deadwood. Cordelia may became Cordelia Crow. From the ashes of one life, she had found another, built not on fear or ownership, but on respect and quiet love. She had finally found home.